What's up, suppers? It is Dimes, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Welcome to another edition of the Suit Up Podcast. Suit Up can be found on iTunes and Spotify. Hit that subscribe button, guys. Here, if you guys are watching us on YouTube, joining me today is my man, Loretto, and we are talking our top 10 comic book movies of all time. I don't know his list. He doesn't know my list. Loretto, are you ready to suit up?
Let's suit up.
Let's suit up.
I am Iron Man.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
The Force will be with you, always.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun.
I could do this all day. What's but a smile on that face?
That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
All right, guys, we are back. Joining me today is, of course, our co-host. He is Loretto. You know him on Twitter at Marcellus Durden. He is part of Movies Matrix. Check out Movies Matrix on Twitter at Movies Matrix. Check out moviesmatrix.com. How you doing, Lo?
How you doing, sir? It's hump day. I wish it was Friday, but, I don't know what day it is sometimes, so.
Awesome. Yeah. So, it is hot as balls here in Pennsylvania. It is like 1,000% humidity. So what better to, fight the heat, beat the heat with some comic book movie talk. Man, what went into your top 10 discussion regarding your favorite comic book movies, man?
I would say which films captured A, my imagination, B, which films actually worked as films. Like, not so much.
Yes.
A lot of casual moviegoers will look at superhero films as all the same, as blockbuster popcorn flicks. But I always love it when superhero films can show us they are more than that. When the script and the acting and the music composition and the cinematography, even when all those things come together, it really does create something more than what you expect. Yeah. And that's what I look for when I look at my favorite films.
Same here, man. Like a good chunk of my list features movies that are just more than just superhero films. These go beyond, they break the boundaries of what defines a superhero film. And we're going to really break it down. All right, Loretto, let's talk about our favorite honorable mentions before we get into our top 10 and we start counting it down. What were some of your honorable mentions, dude?
So I got a special request from a good buddy of mine, Twitter user CT-7567. 2004 is The Punisher. Whoa. I agree. And if we have an underrated list, I think that is a definitely worthy mention. Thomas Jane did not get enough credit. A lot of people write him off as like a rom-com soft guy, but he was great as Frank Castle. He was badass. That fight with the Russian is one of the most brutal fights on superhero cinema.
Totally.
It's a great addition. It didn't quite make my honorable mentions, but my buddy brought it up, and I agree. It's a great underrated film. Terribly forgotten, terribly underrated. Going down more on my list, I just want to do a quick shout out to Blank Man. It's super cheesy. It's super campy.
Okay.
But personally, from a lot of people in my age group, I don't know about you, Dives. I don't know about you, but I grew up on In Living Color.
Hell yeah.
And
is that Marlon Wayans?
That's Damon Wayans.
Damon Wayans, my bad. That's awesome.
And his sidekick, other guy, was David Alan Grier. And together, I mean, they were already on In Living Color together. So their chemistry was already there.
Yep.
And as cheesy and corny as it is, and it's not very believable, the premise is out there, but for a guy to just make like a superhero suit and like do science and create his own lair out of like everyday materials, but not being like Bruce Wayne, having the money to do what Bruce Wayne does. I just thought that was a fun concept. He had the coolest car ever when he attached like a beat up motorcycle to like the subway rails. He's a fun character, and it wasn't the most action-packed film, but as a superhero comedy, it was super fun and memorable for me. Next honorable mention, I only got two more after this. Spawn.
Oh, so good.
for its time, 1997, before CGI was actually perfected, I felt like the effects don't hold up now, but it looked great back then. His
Oh, yeah.
cape and the Violator, when John Leguizamo, who did an excellent performance, by the way, in
So
a
good.
fat bodysuit, when he morphed into the full Violator, holy crap, that was epic. And I think a lot of the problems with Spawn was a lot of it wasn't the filmmakers or the actors' fault. There was a lot of heavy cuts. It went from an R to a PG-13, and I feel like it hindered the vision. But visually, and I thought as a film, I thought it worked really well, better than what people give it credit for. And my last honorable mention, it's gonna be surprised that it didn't make my top 10, but shouts out to the original Iron Man.
Yeah.
It started the MCU. It's one of the best performances ever. I love Robert Downey Jr. He was born to play Tony Stark. Jon Favreau was a visionary in a sense that without diving too deep into the MCU in the beginning, he established the foundation for what the MCU could become. And it didn't quite make my top 10, but Jon Favreau, Robert Downey Jr., thank you so much. It's near and dear to my heart.
I am so glad you mentioned Iron Man because we did a Pixar podcast a little bit ago, and I put Toy Story on there, not because it's the best Toy Story movie, not because it's the best Pixar movie, but it started everything. It was revolutionary. It was the first CGI movie. It kind of set the bar for what animated movies was, and as Iron Man was, that was Iron Man. It set everything. It was world building. It set up Tony Stark. It was so much more than just a superhero movie, and I'm really glad you said that because I just got to work. I made my list, and that wasn't on my list. That absolutely needs at least a nod because Iron Man is so important, especially with what I'm about to get into with my top 10. I want to give a little quick nod. Great choices, by the way. Blank Man. Woo! It came out of left field. I love it. Love it, man. I got to go with Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2, and I want to just throw those two together because Guillermo del Toro is one of my favorite directors of all time, and those movies are so imaginative. They're so well done. The creatures, the set designs, the action, everything about those films are really kind of top-notch, and I don't think it deserves I don't think it gets as much credit as it should, and I just love those films. And here are some movies that I don't have on my top 10. And one of them is Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is where it gets really tight because I have a top 10 and Guardians of the Galaxy didn't make my top 10. But this is like another one of those movies. I kind of started us off with saying that these are not just superhero movies. These are fucking great movies on their own right. And like Guardians of the Galaxy is like everything that I hope the Eternals will eventually become. I didn't know much about Guardians when I first went into this movie. When I heard they were making a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. I don't know anything about these characters. I didn't grow up watching a Guardians of the Galaxy on Fox Kids on Saturday morning. Like it was kind of an off the wall choice, but sure enough, man, this is like a sprawling space opera where the characters are fantastic. The director obviously just crushed this, has one of the best soundtracks of all time. So much love went into this movie. So I had to put this on my list. The We Are Groot scene is one of my favorite MCU moments in the MCU. My other film that gets an honorable mention is Black Panther. And this is Ryan Coogler's Black Panther. And it is just very sad to me that it's not in my top 10 for so many reasons, guys. Black Panther is such an important film beyond just the MCU. This goes well beyond the superhero genre. Black Panther brings a storyline that tackles modern political and social issues, but this is way more than a superhero movie, and it's just such a groundbreaking film in many respects. It celebrates culture. It was such a breath of fresh air in the genre. Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger, one of the best villains, man. He was so relatable as a villain. The "Is this your king? Is this your king?" scene in that coronation ceremony fight scene, man. Just all the feels. And then my last honorable mention is one of my personal favorites. The 1980s Superman movie will always be a classic. Superman 2 will always be a classic. But man, I am talking about Man of Steel. That is my Superman. Henry Cavill is my Superman. It's just a film that's challenging. It's thought-provoking. It's insightful. Like, Supes is not like this poster child. This guy is an inspiration. He's meant to be inspiring. And it's really a shame that the DCU kind of dropped the ball with this. The amount of storytelling and love that went into Man of Steel, for them to really not continue with a Man of Steel from the jump is a fucking crime. And just, I love this movie. Everything from the cinematography, the action set piece, like from the jump, like you are thrown into Krypton with Russell Crowe, and it is just visually mind-blowing. It's still to this day a very underrated film. It's not at all a kids movie. It deals with some very serious issues. It's about, adults making choices that are not black and white. They are in that gray area. So nothing about this movie is fun like the MCU. Nothing about Man of Steel is lighthearted like the MCU. It was a very serious tone. And I just hate how people kind of tear it apart. Man of Steel is amazing. That first flight scene with Hans Zimmer, the score in the background, man, that is hands down one of my favorite superhero scenes of all time. So those are my three honorable mentions. I'm sorry I went on a rant. Any takes on that, dude?
Hey, you're all good, bro. Excellent choices. I personally loved Man of Steel too. And I agree. It's ridiculous that we didn't get the sequel and instead got whatever the hell BVS was trying to be. I'm really glad you brought up Guardians, man. And I agree. Like, I didn't know anything about them either, but it stole my heart.
Yeah.
I just recently did the watch party with James Gunn.
Yeah.
Where we all shared our thoughts on Twitter via hashtag, and the We Are Groot scene. You're right, man. It made me tear up too.
Yeah.
And to an even further extent, I actually love Volume 2 as well. I can't wait for the third one. So, yeah, man, great choices, man.
Yeah. If there's any kind of like anything you get out of this podcast is to the studios of WB, to the studios of Marvel, Disney, whatever, Sony. Is that even still around anymore? I don't know. But don't fuck around with a director's creative thought process. Don't mess with them. If they love a project, just let it be and let it ride. Because I think the best movies in the superhero genre, like Guardians, like a lot of the ones we're going to talk about, are the ones that, are so beautifully crafted and in ways that you would never expect a superhero film to be. So let's jump into our top 10, man. I don't know Lo's list. He doesn't know mine. We're going to start off with number 10. Go ahead, my man.
All right. My number 10 is actually one of your honorable mentions.
Nice.
This character just he snuck his way into my heart. I have a thing. I don't know. Anti-heroes just kind of speak to me because they're flawed. And I'm talking about 2008's Hellboy 2, The Golden Army.
Ooh!
And, off bat, you mentioned it a few moments ago. Guillermo del Toro is a fantastic director known for his visionary creations and creative creature design. And Hellboy 2 is no different. What really stole my heart here is because, at heart, I'm a ringer. So I love Lord of the Rings. So for Hellboy, a demon who's raised by an American science man, for him to dig deep and discover elves like living beneath the soil and this hidden kingdom and I loved the lore. I love the mythology and not just the fact that they're elves. The way it was executed was beautiful. Again, hats off to Guillermo del Toro and all of his effects team. Another thing I love about Hellboy 2 is it's the action's pretty good, but the characters, the way they play off each other, Abe and Hellboy, Ron Perlman is fantastic, and his sarcastic sense of humor, it's just so fun. And I don't want to go too long on this film, but my favorite scene in the film is Abe's like heartbroken because he's fallen in love with the elf princess, and he's listening to I can't remember the title of the song, but I can't go on without you. And he's getting all emo, and then
They're
Hellboy's
chugging
like, hey,
beers.
man, what was it?
They're chugging beers.
Yeah, and they're chugging beers, and Hellboy's like, hey, man, here, grab one of these. You need it. You need it. And he's going through it with Selma Blair, and it's just some bros hanging out, like just like pouring their hearts out. And I thought it was adorable. And in a superhero film, it's nice to see those emotional connections, and it was purely genuine. There was nothing like fake about it, and the way they acted it was great. Hellboy 2, man, I loved it. Fun film.
Truly great film. And one of my favorite parts about that, and I'm pretty sure, let us know if we're wrong in that comment section below, but it came out right after Pan's Labyrinth, which is hands down one of my favorite movies of all time. And it was almost as if Guillermo del Toro just copied and pasted all of these amazing ideas from this film and put it into Hellboy 2. There's a lot of similarities there with the creature designs and the set pieces and all of that. It was gorgeous. Just visually
And by the way,
gorgeous.
in the same way that Man of Steel was kind of got the shaft, I really hate that we didn't get a Hellboy 3 with Guillermo del Toro and Ron Perlman. Nothing against what they were trying to do, but the reboot did not work.
Yeah.
And it flopped, and it just shows the world and fans like me, we deserved a Hellboy 3, a real one.
I fully agree with that. Fully agree. All right. My number 10 is X2. So the year was 2003. And similar to my next film at number 9, this movie proved that sequels can overcome the first installments. I'm going with X2, man. X2 has some of the best scenes in the X-Men franchise, between that Nightcrawler scene in the White House, invading the White House, and then Wolverine's Berserker mode. I remember being a kid for the first time watching this movie, and we're getting the Berserker mode. I was so excited that we got it for the first time in X2. But man, beyond that, it just dives into Wolverine's history. It gave us some of the best post-credit scenes of all time. Before post-credit scenes were something, this had one of the best. And I'm talking about the Phoenix scene. I was so hyped after seeing Phoenix under the water. My man, dude, I directly compare this scene to Nick Fury when we first saw him at the end of Iron Man. Just an incredible feeling, incredible experience leaving the theater. Is there anything more badass than Hugh Jackman screaming, running down a hallway with his claws out? Just like, I just put that on rewind and I can just run 12 miles every single day. That is how inspiring that is.
Awesome pick, man. I'm going to piggyback off of that. That's actually my number 8. So we'll come back to my number 9. But
Okay.
X2, man. A lot of people, are on the Logan train. A lot of people will mention Days of Future Past, which they're both excellent films. But I feel like what I liked about X2, it's in the title. The colon is X-Men United. And personally, it was the best cinematic interpretation of their team.
Yep.
Days of Future Past, it's almost strictly a Wolverine and Professor X focused tale. You see the future X-Men fighting together for like 2 minutes. And that's what really bothered me about that. But, in X2, you see them work as a team. They go on a mission, and you see like Jean and Storm have to go get Nightcrawler. And then you see like they actually have to combine with the Brotherhood to defeat Stryker at the end. So they team up with Mystique and Magneto, and then they go on a mission together in the Blackbird. It was excellent. And we also got great character development, and even like the little cameos that they gave was enough for me at the time that, we like you said, we'd never seen anything like that Phoenix moment. And for comic fans of that time, these all happening for the first time. So my little bit of Colossus, who's my favorite mutant, by the way, he was on screen for like 20 seconds, but I lost my mind. I was like, oh, okay. And he suited up. They're bouncing bullets off of him. And that blew my mind. I was like, yes. And maybe shortly, a minute or two before or after that, we saw Kitty go through a wall, and then she got more of a role in X3, which was not as good. But X2, just as an X-Men fan, that's my favorite. Yep. Those are my favorite heroes in general. My favorite comic heroes are the X-Men. And while the franchise with Fox wasn't the best, I would say X2 was the best they had to offer.
Hell yeah, man. X-Men are a team. The Fantastic Four are a team. the very basis of their whole essence is working together and solving problems. And hopefully the MCU gets it right this time. And just, I would be totally down for a very like small scale X-Men or Fantastic Four film where it's just them being a family and figuring it out together. And that's like who they are, I think. That's just my opinion. And of course, I would like to focus on more specific characters like Rogue. It's time for Rogue to get her moment on the center stage. It's time for those characters that didn't really get a chance in future installments of the X-Men.
One more little side note, man.
Yeah, man.
Because we talked about this when we did our little X-Men watch party. The Fox X franchise screwed over Cyclops, but his best performance is in X2.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a lot of moments to shine, but he at least was a little relevant in X2. So I just wanted to mention that they didn't do Cyclops justice at all, but that was the best they did. So
Absolutely.
We need more Cyclops in MCU.
Amen, man. We on number 9, right? So do you want to go ahead and go give us our number 9, dude?
All right. So my number 9, going back to 1978, this movie kicked it off. We wouldn't have the MCU. We wouldn't have anything without this film and without it being successful. And, hats off to John Williams, man, because the second you hear and it builds up. Oh man, I am ready to go. I am ready to fly. And Superman's not even my favorite character. I'm talking about Superman the movie.
Nice.
John Williams' score alone makes me want to grab a blanket and put it on my back and be a kid again.
Yep.
It just gives me all like the nostalgic, but also like uplifting feels.
Yep.
In the best ways possible. And again, we're talking about, the great John Williams, and he's the kind of person that can transcend film. And I think him to score that film was perfect. It was picture perfect. Like, you couldn't ask for a better pairing. And the brilliant cast that Superman the movie had, going to Gene Hackman, Christopher Reeve, who played a perfect bumbling Clark Kent. But then when he actually had his, got his Superman on, he had the confidence, the charisma. And lastly, even though he kind of phoned it in, Marlon Brando as Jor-El,
so good.
I mean, his presence alone just gives the film more gravitas and more, his acting, even though if it's not his best acting, he's a brilliant actor. Sorry, I'm having a hard time over here. He's one of the greatest actors of our time. And Superman the movie, it paved the way for the superhero movies we know now. The action doesn't hold up as well today in 2020, but the story they told with that film is still worth watching.
I mean, what more can you say? I mean, I don't have Superman or Superman 2 on my list. I liked Man of Steel more. Come at me. It's just it's what it is. I'll even go to bat that the Hans Zimmer score is better than the John Williams score.
Oh!
So I said it. It's that good. But I just want to kind of piggyback off of what you said a little bit about John Williams. And when you think about movie genres, I can't think of a more important movie genre than the superhero comic book film and a film score. The two are kind of like one and one. I feel like when we talk about our favorite superhero movies, you almost immediately think of some iconic film score by Hans Zimmer or James Newton Howard or Danny Elfman. I just find that really, really fascinating. I think those two are just so kind of like they go hand in hand. And I really appreciate that. My number 9 is Spider-Man 2. It's a little low for me, but it is what it is. And I think what makes Spider-Man 2 such an amazing film is how Sam Raimi weaves all the best stories of Spider-Man, of what makes Spider-Man into one cohesive film. And we see Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker contemplating whether or not he still wants to be Spider-Man. He loses his power. He loses his faith. We see MJ set to get married. We're given a sympathetic villain, which was incredible at the time in Doc Ock, played by the excellent Alfred Molina. So good. And then we get Harry Osborn blaming Spider-Man for killing his father. we see themes of Spider-Man being further fleshed out, and no way should all of this make sense in one movie. But sure enough, it does. And that is really just a huge compliment to Mr. Sam Raimi. And I just really find this movie, not for the amazing moments in the movie, and you're going to see this kind of as a pattern in all of the rest of my 1 through 8 here, is that just so much credit needs to go to Sam Raimi for being able to manage and balance all this star power, all of these stories, all this pressure, and just the love for the character from Sam Raimi translates to the big screen. And that's what I'm just trying to say. So that is just Spider-Man 2 is just a massive summer blockbuster. It's got everything you want in a summer blockbuster. And it's one of those movies where you're just so exhausted when it's over, and you're just, you got your money's worth when you leave that theater. It is so well done. So Spider-Man 2 is my number 9. Any take on that, man?
I'll have a little more to say on it a little later, but
Right.
I agree with everything you said. It's a beautiful picture, and I'll touch on it in a little bit.
Love it. Let's go. Let's move on to number 8, my man. What's your number 8 comic book movie?
All right, so my number 8 was X2. So I'm actually jumping. I'm jumping to 7, or did you want to do your 8?
I'll do my number 8. My number 8 is the Avengers. Joss Whedon's
Nice.
Avengers. Something we've never seen before on the big screen at the time. Like Iron Man came out, just 4 years before this movie, and similar to Sam Raimi, Joss Whedon absolutely crushed it. There's a reason that this behemoth of a movie has never been attempted before. Talking about the Avengers here, like, how do you fully flesh out, care about, and establish this vast amount of characters and still kind of keep it, one cohesive film? I just have so much respect for Joss Whedon in that respect. And it's just one of the most impressive aspects of the Avengers is how they managed to get each hero their moment in the spotlight. Whether they're a main character or a side character, a hero, Nick Fury, you name it. It's just really remarkable how they were able, Joss Whedon was able to kind of find that balance. And I had to be just straight up exhausting. There's so many memorable moments in the film, but the directing of Joss Whedon is the true star of the film to me. And just a quick note, like that Loki Hulk beatdown at the end of the film is still to this day one of the best cinematic moments of my life. Everyone lost their shit during that moment. It was hilarious. It was just a feel-good moment, and it was just a ton of fun. So my number 8 is the Avengers.
To this day, that like that film when it came out, one of my favorite cinematic experiences. I don't care what anybody says, and people could say what they want, but when people get that excited and that affected in a cinema, that's cinema. So I'm sorry, Mr. Scorsese, and I'm sorry to all the MCU haters, but what can you say? Because the point of cinema is to make us feel something, and when you have an entire theater cheering on Hulk slamming Loki on the floor, and to touch on that, man, like that's one of those moments where, like, when you watch movies, sometimes you think, oh, I wish the hero would do this. I wish he would do this. That came to life because Loki was, pardon my French, he was a bastard in that movie. He was a jerk. And that's what you wanted to see, and we got it. And Hulk was just like puny god, and it's awesome. It's awesome. Great choice, man.
We're thrown in the middle of this amazing battle, the Battle of New York, and there's so much going on. There's so many memorable scenes. And then we get to Loki versus Hulk. Like, it was so climatic, and the fight was anticlimactic. Like, it was so perfectly nailed. And it was hilarious. There's so many good moments in that movie. And like an underrated moment of that movie, I think, is when Captain America has to prove to the cops that they need to listen to him. So there was a scene where they're like, why should we take orders from you? And then Q, like, he takes down like 4 or 5 guys, and they're like, a pan angle. They're like, we need 5 men over here. We need 6 men on 39th Street. Like, that was a great, great moment where Captain America just kind of established himself as just, a strategist and a badass.
Yeah, no, and people can say what they want about Joss Whedon, but he nails stuff like that. Those little moments that really
Yeah,
capture the character. And yeah, great choice, man. Didn't quite make my list, but
awesome.
one of my favorite cinematic experiences for sure.
All right, go ahead.
All right, now we go to the sevens. We went a little bit out of order, but
Let's do it.
Shouts out to another OG. I had Superman at 9. Number 7, I got 1989's Batman.
Boom.
Directed by Tim Burton, starring Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton. And a lot of people don't remember. I don't remember when I was a toddler, but this was the first time there was a literal mania for a fandom or film. From my research, Batman was everywhere. And the product placement and the marketing for it was off the charts. And that doesn't have anything to do with the film itself, but I thought this was a film that comic fans needed. I mean, it was almost a full decade or over a decade since Superman. So for Batman to make the entrance that he did, and I again, hats off to visionary directors like Guillermo del Toro and like Joss Whedon. Tim Burton is a mastermind. If you watch his films are art. He himself is an artist. He draws really well, and he has a very distinct, like, gothic look, and it was perfect for Gotham City. That first shot, and actually the intro going through the caves and then pulling out to the Bat logo with Danny Elfman's iconic score, I think is one of the most underrated intros of all time. And then after you get out of that wonderful score, you see Gotham in its full glory with its whole out of this world. It's not New York. This is Gotham. Like, it was comic book coming to life. And I think Tim Burton captured that. And not only did he capture that, Jack Nicholson captured it. His Joker's a little bit kooky and zany, but it worked for that film. Because Jack Nicholson himself has that same kind of gravitas and charisma that Marlon Brando has. He's just a brilliant generational actor. Something I couldn't say earlier properly, but and Michael Keaton, what can I say? People gave him crap before this because they thought he was Mr. Mom, but I think Michael Keaton shows that actors do have what is called range. Like, just because a guy is in a comedy or a rom-com doesn't mean they can't do action. Michael Keaton was great. He played the suave Bruce Wayne well, and when he had the cowl on, he was intimidating. And before Christian Bale, he gave us that in-your-face, I'm Batman, and it's just, it gives you chills. And yeah, man, I love Batman 89, man. Wonderful superhero film, memorable.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the full moonlight?
Nice.
Just iconic. It's not on my list. Batman 1989 is not on my list, but we're going to be talking about Batman very soon.
Wait. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Oh man, there's so many iconic moments in that movie. Jack Nicholson kills it. I think we're gonna be talking about the Joker pretty soon. But let's talk about, very briefly, what was your reaction to Michael Keaton being as a mentor coming up in the future DCEU? Any takes on that? Quick takes?
If I'm being honest, I love the actor. I'm sure whatever role it is they have for him, it'll be great. But if it's not Bruce Wayne and Batman Beyond, I don't want it.
That's exactly where I'm at. And like on one end, like I would love it. I've been screaming. Before you came on, like we've done pods where I've went on rants to get a Return of the Joker, Batman Beyond live action film. And it would be the ultimate. It would be the ultimate. So on one end, this is my personal take. On one end, I'm excited that Michael Keaton's joining. It's a great decision. On the other end, I just am very confused on the creative direction of the DCEU. I just don't. This is kind of like when you saw in Justice League. They used a lot of the elements from the original Batman, 1989 Batman score in the Justice League. And it's just, I don't know if they know what they want in the future of the DCEU. And that's how I perceive that. Like, I think it could work, but how many times does the DCEU have a great idea and actually follow through with it? So I am more skeptical than I am, optimistic.
And apparently Matt Reeves' Batman is standalone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's weird.
All right, let's stick to my number 7. We're gonna stick to the DCU, and that is Wonder Woman. Obviously, I'm a DC guy, so it is what it is, and similar to Black Panther in some respects, but Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman proved that like a female-led superhero film can not only be a critical success, but a box office domination as well. So I freely admit that my expectations for Gal Gadot were extremely low before this movie was released. I had like very low expectations for this film. The movies before this was the Suicide Squad. It was Batman versus Superman. Like, dude, the DCU was completely in shambles. I had no idea what to expect from this. And then in comes the legend, Patty Jenkins. And her take on Wonder Woman just continues to inspire today. It was just such a great flick. That No Man's Land scene is so epic. But my favorite is at the end when like Steve Trevor confesses his love for Diana, and Wonder Woman chooses to fight for what she believes in, and that is love. Just so ridiculously good, so inspiring. A superhero is meant to inspire. We know this from Superman, and that is just something that still resonates today. It's I think the quote is like, it's not about what you deserve, it's about what you believe, and I believe in love. And it's something that Wonder Woman choosing that to believe in love over fear and hate. And it's just such an inspiring film. So my number 7 is Wonder Woman. And the score is just, I think, Henry Gregerson, something like that. Epic score. Wonder Woman. That's Hans Zimmer. That's Hans Zimmer.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. So he did the theme of Wonder Woman.
Okay.
There's a Wonder Woman score, and I think Hans Zimmer's doing Wonder Woman 84, so it's going to be awesome.
So he does the main theme, but then the other stuff we hear in the movie is
correct.
The other guy. Okay.
Correct. So the theme you hear in BVS for Wonder Woman is Hans Zimmer. So good. So I love Wonder Woman. It's an inspiring movie. It's a movie that got the DCU on the right track after just the failures of Suicide Squad and BVS. I'm sorry, Zack Snyder. I'm not part of the release the Snyder whatever. It's all bullshit to me. Sorry, it is what it is. And I'm just so grateful for Wonder Woman for a quality film and kind of using a female superhero as a lead and just crushing it. It was just so great to see.
Yeah. If we had a list for best like overall superhero moments, man, that No Man's Land scene would be in my top 10 for sure. It gave me chills, and the confidence she had walking out there, and the sheer jaws dropping of all the men,
yes.
the battle hardened soldiers. Like, what is she doing? It's just brilliant. Great choice, man. So as we go into the number 6s, I've got my first curveball of the list. Throwing it. 2010 Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time, and Edgar Wright is a fantastic director in his own right. I love all of his work, from Shaun of the Dead to Baby Driver. He has a distinct, like, quirky style that's just so fun, and it was perfect for what this film was. Based on the manga that I wasn't familiar with, but I did kind of look at it later after the film because it piqued my interest. And he nails a lot of the themes. He nails a lot of the visuals. And besides being like based on a manga and having all this fun, like quirky action, it reminded me a lot of bringing a video game to life, which I thought to do that in this day and age is something that hasn't been done before. Like, like when he defeats the first evil boyfriend and you hear like coins drop and like, and yeah. And then, it has a fantastic cast as well. Before she got big, we got Anna Kendrick, we got Aubrey Plaza in a little like small role, Brie Larson, Chris Evans, who I was just about to bring up. And I loved, like, it brings another different version of like Tim Burton's like visionary comic books in a different, like, colorful way. Like you see like little sparks coming off the skateboard with like letter sound effects. Like it's just so touches like that really kind of give you a different experience than what you're expecting. And Michael Cera, I mean, what can I say, man? He's great. His comedic timing is his own. He is his own character. There's no one like Michael Cera on the planet.
No.
And some of the comedic bits in this are just so fun. When he's avoiding like his ex-girlfriend and he jumps out the window. And his roommate, who's played by Macaulay Culkin's also talented younger brother, Kiernan.
Yeah.
It's just Scott Pilgrim is just so fun and so unique. And I think in terms of shouts out to Brandon Routh too. Ex-Superman, who was the vegan boyfriend. It's such a fun movie, man. Jason Schwartzman plays the big bad. He's great in everything he's in. He's like super snarky and he plays a jerk really well. He's one of those guys you love to like root against. And also Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who you've seen in Birds of Prey most recently. She's the wonderful Ramona Flowers. I was in love. Who wasn't? It's just Scott Pilgrim warms my heart. It's just such a fun tale. And it's different from anything you'll ever see in terms of comic books and superheroes.
That's a great choice, man. That is a curveball. That's not on my list, obviously, but that's a great film. I didn't see that until like 5 or 6 years ago, and it's great. It is great, right? And it's got the music element, the variable for you, so it makes sense for you, right?
Oh, I'm all about that, man. He's in a band, and they had a little battle of the bands, and then
man,
that other band had like dragons coming out of their speakers. It's just so off the wall, but it works. It's like you almost think like a movie like this should not be as good as it is, and I think that's another thing that elevates it for me. It's just this shouldn't have worked, and it was so fun.
Fantastic choice. My number 6 is Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan's grounded take on Batman, man, is just so incredibly important for the superhero genre, man. Just Nolan's knack for realism was such a breath of fresh air at the time, and there are no like next to computer generated shots in this movie, man. Like what you see is what you get, and Gotham felt like it was literally lifted out of the page in this movie, man. It just all works. Even the Batmobile interacts with the environment. It's just a very realistic, grounded film. You would think that Gotham exists, in today's society. That's how great it was. But the heart of Batman Begins, the heart of this film, for me, was the relationships that the film introduces. And for me, that is the bond between Batman and his father, Bruce Wayne and his father, and Bruce Wayne and Alfred. For a Batman movie, like Batman Begins has a ton of heart and even better script. But like that relationship carries the film for me. But weaving the score, I think that was Hans Zimmer. Pretty sure it was James Newton Howard and Hans Zimmer did Batman Begins
together.
Yeah, and that there were so many moments in this film. It doesn't have the best action, but it's one of those like that I'm impressed that Christopher Nolan, like the studios didn't give an F. That Christopher Nolan's creating a Batman movie driven on story and attachment and heart, and they okayed a Batman movie like that. So it's just really, really, really cool. So Batman Begins is like my new hope. Batman Begins is a new hope to the Batman franchise for me. The Dark Knight and The Empire Strikes Back, they're far better movies. We're going to talk about that very soon. But it's like, for whatever reason, there's something about Batman Begins that makes this movie more watchable for me. Like, I would rather watch Batman Begins than The Dark Knight. I have no idea why. Maybe it's the score, even though the score in The Dark Knight is perfection. But it is just such an enjoyable movie. Like watching Batman go through his training montage with the flashbacks and his origin. And one day you'll catch yourself wishing the person you loved had never existed, so you'll be spared of the pain by Ra's al Ghul. Like, there's so many moments in this movie that were just so mind-blowing and deep and rich. So my number 6 is Batman Begins. I just all time.
Honestly, it's one of the greatest films of all time. I hate that it's not on my list, but shouts out to the villains in that film. Cillian Murphy plays a haunting scarecrow, man. Like, don't watch that movie on any kind of substances because it shook me to the core when I'm sober. I wouldn't want to see that on hallucinogenics or anything. Liam Neeson, man,
So good.
Liam Neeson plays such a good mentor, but you know, I don't like that cliche of, hey, I'm your friend, oh, now I'm the enemy, but it worked for that film. And it pulls the rug out from under you when you learn I am Ra's al Ghul. And it's like the same way like Batman's a legacy character. It's like Ra's al Ghul could be anybody. And fantastic choice, man. Christopher Nolan's one of the greatest directors alive. I agree. It's a great film, man.
Fingers crossed, like this whole Flashpoint shit will introduce if the DCU is slowly getting it, back on the right track, but the DCAU is amazing, and I would love to see like Liam Neeson come back as Ra's al Ghul, maybe training a Son of Batman live action film. That would be freaking awesome. That is a great movie. If you haven't seen Son of Batman, one of the best animated Batman movies out there. So good. All right, let's talk about our top 5. We're finally getting into our top 5.
Yeah, I know. This is a doozy, man, but we got a lot to talk about. So here we go. Top 5, man. This is the penultimate comic book experience. And I got to kick it off. 2016's Captain America Civil War.
Oh, nice.
For a long time, maybe like 3 years, that was my favorite comic book film.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. My top 2 are always my top 2. I have a different tier for other films, but like when it came out, like to me, like that was like the perfect comic book film, if I could say it that way. To see Iron Man and Spider-Man teaming up and fight Captain America and Falcon and Ant-Man, and to see that all together, even though there wasn't that many stakes because no one dies, there's no real loss of life. I mean, Rhodey gets paralyzed, but just seeing it. And hats off to the Russo brothers, who I'm gonna talk about them again later. But they have this knack for giving characters like just enough screen time to capture the spirit of the character, but also, with a film with like 18 superheroes or even 12, just to give them that right amount of screen time to make you feel like they affected the film, they affected the story. To introduce Black Panther the way that they did, Chadwick Boseman was brilliant, and it was badass, and he pulled at your heartstrings with his father dying. It was a complete performance, and his screen time is maybe 10 to 12 minutes. And I think, again, the Russo brothers know how to get the best out of those 12 minutes. And then, disclaimer, my favorite superhero in general, I love the X-Men, but right above the X-Men is Peter Parker. So for the MCU to introduce Peter Parker the way they did in Civil War, Tom Holland was born to play him. And his little fun introduction with Tony and Queens, and then his little, hey, everybody, and he steals Cap's shield. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite moments. If we're talking about favorite superhero moments, that's one of my favorites, man. They nailed him. I love Homecoming, and I love how he is in Infinity War, but Civil War Spider-Man, a lot of people on the internet have been saying this, that's the best Spider-Man we've seen. When he's crawling on the glass, chasing Winter Soldier and Falcon, and he's quirky and he's funny. He's cracking jokes in the middle of the fight. Like, you have a metal arm? He was perfect. And Civil War, man, it balanced. And another thing I want to say before, I don't want to go too long, but it had a lot of dark themes as well. I love that it really played on the morality of our beloved Avengers, because as fun as 2012's Avengers was, I liked that Civil War really showed audiences like, hey, it's not all fun and games. Look at Sokovia. Look at New York. Like, it's decimated. People are dying, and Tony had to deal with that guilt. And I also liked that Tony, being the face of the MCU, to kind of almost make him a little bit of a villain, because for him to witness his parents get murdered by Bucky, I mean, he's our hero and he's ready to murder Bucky. I think those conflicts and those themes were very mature. Like, this isn't some kiddie, people want to talk bad about MCU. It's not some kiddie story. Like, Tony's parents were murdered and he's fighting for their honor. And in the end, you know, he goes to blows with Steve Rogers, and to see them recreate that cover of Civil War where he blasts the shield, it's beautiful. It's picture perfect, man. And yeah, it hit my top 5, man. I love Civil War.
It's not on my list, but you know, just to piggyback off, yeah, it's amazing. I think you're gonna find my theme is Russo brothers centric. That is the single greatest game changer in the MCU when they came on board. We'll talk about that. But that scene of Captain America and Iron Man fighting each other, that is borderline like almost like a horror movie. Like, it is unwatchable. You have grown up watching these characters. You love their character arcs. Even now, knowing how Endgame ended, like that scene actually is more effective because you know where those characters are going and how important they are to each other and everything else. So it's just a great choice, man. So Civil War, I love the Spider-Man moment when he's fighting Captain America and they're like exchanging courtesies, and he's like, "Where are you from?" You're like, "Brooklyn." Like, it's so funny, so great. Yeah, we're gonna talk a lot about that in a little bit. But my number 5, I'm staying on the Russo brothers train, and that is Avengers Endgame. So Avengers Endgame is above everything else a great homage to the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The story highlights, you know, the main characters. I'm talking about Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, all those guys. And I go, you know, the first act is a little slow, but I'm going to jump into the last 45 minutes, which is absolutely bananas. And we're talking about just some of the best moments in the MCU. My personally favorite moment is not Captain America retrieving Mjolnir. It's not the Iron Man finger snap like I am Iron Man, even though it's so freaking ridiculous that the MCU started with it and ended with it, phase 3. But my favorite moment is when you see Captain America standing and you see the rest of Thanos' army. And one of my favorite character arcs of Captain America is when he's like, I could do this all day. And he refute. There it is. There it is, my man.
You couldn't see all of my shirt, but he's there.
So, like, there were so many moments in these last 45 minutes. But that moment where Captain America is, like, just standing. He's got debris all over him. He's battered. His shield's broken. And you just see Thanos' army over the hill. And everything is just him. And this was like just before the Avengers Assemble moment. Just my favorite still. It is so iconic to who Steve Rogers is. It is so important to his character arc. And he just fights for what he believes in. He fights for people. And it was just such a geek out moment. Avengers Endgame is not the best Avengers movie, but that might be probably my favorite Avengers moment. So as a swan song, Endgame is perfect in many areas. That Tony Stark, the way they wrapped up Tony Stark and Steve Rogers is, especially Steve Rogers getting that final dance with Peggy. Fucking A, man. It just lit me up. I was just crying in the theater. Just handled so beautifully well. Avengers Endgame, my number 5. It's my number 5, and it's crazy to say it's my number 5.
I was just gonna say, man. Unfortunately, it's not even on my list, and I hate it. I hate that it's not on my list. It's like it has some of the greatest comic book moments of all time. Avengers Assemble and Cap picking up Mjolnir. I mean, it's amazing, but unfortunately, it just didn't quite crack my list because we'll talk about this later. But I feel like, well, yeah, we'll talk about this later of why I couldn't quite fit it on my list. But are we going on?
Let's keep going. Number 4, my man.
So I'm gonna go to number 4. 2002's Unbreakable.
What? Okay, let's go.
Your Philly boy, M. Night Shyamalan, man. Again, I'm throwing curveballs, but you know, that's one of my favorite superhero films ever. It was just so well executed, and predating Batman Begins. This is probably the most realistic take on a superhero ever. I mean, this is like the perfect way it could actually play out if this guy was real. And I love the way Bruce Willis tackles the role. It's something he doesn't want, and it's so. One thing about this film is, there's almost zero action. This film is all vibe and mood and the use of color and M. Night Shyamalan, along with Sixth Sense, these two films go hand in hand. You could put these films in a film class and break it down, the way it's shot, the way he's alluding to the secret that we don't find out until the end, but the hints are there. And Samuel Jackson delivers one of the most iconic performances as Mr. Glass.
So good.
I love the duality of, Bruce Willis is unbreakable, but Samuel Jackson is just bone shatter, but he's a pure evil mastermind, and it's such an interesting take on the genre. When I first saw Unbreakable in the theaters, I was expecting something like Sixth Sense. I was expecting a thriller, a horror almost. And what's interesting is that first act is very creepy. It gets under your skin in a weird way that I can only compare it to somebody like Ari Aster, where there's not a lot going on, but just like the tones of James Newton Howard's score or like the way he's shooting it, it makes you a little uncomfortable. And in speaking of uncomfortable, probably one of the most horrifying sequences I've ever seen is when Samuel Jackson falls down the stairs. And you can hear his bones break, and he just and it just tore me apart. And the whole film, you get latched onto their partnership because you think they're friends, and then when Bruce Willis finally shakes his hand, man, that blew my mind. It just one of my favorite endings of all time. And again, I'm talking about cinema, man. Like this is just a really good film. Like, take away all the supernatural stuff of it. It just has great acting performances. And one last thing, I don't want to go too long, but Robin Wright and what's his name, who played the son, they have this really intense moment where the son's trying to prove to his dad that he's a superhero and has a gun on him. And the tension and the acting there is just incredible. It's a master film for me.
That's a great choice, man. Another curveball there. Didn't even think about it. It's not on my list. Unbreakable is widely underrated. Man, great choice. Great choice there, my man. Let's do my number 4, and I'm talking about Logan. It's hard to explain the epicness and the greatness of this movie, man. And just James Mangold's Logan was such a game changer when it came out. Like, Logan was so much more than a superhero film. The film was, like, honestly not even an X-Men film to me. It was like literally about giving Hugh Jackman his farewell salute. It was about saying goodbye to this character that has been living and breathing the Wolverine character for 17 freaking years and giving him a proper farewell. And I don't know what to say. It's just Hugh Jackman's performance was probably his best as Wolverine. The Logan storyline is extremely tragic. The action is amazing. The Wolverine Berserker Rage mode in that forest scene towards the end is one of my favorite Wolverine moments. When you hear Hugh Jackman's like roar from the distance, like, like, you know exactly who that is. You know exactly that is Wolverine. That is Hugh Jackman. So, fingers crossed that Kevin Feige can find a replacement for that. But man, it's just like it was just one of those dark films, that R-rated films that kind of continued the snowball of what we're seeing today with a lot of superhero movies like Joker and things moving forward with that. But just an incredible movie. Logan's my number 4. Any take on that? And what's your number 3, man?
Yeah, hats off to James Mangold, man. A modern, like, superhero-centric Western. And
yeah.
Character study. I mean, throw the action out the window, man. It's like him with X-23 and almost giving him like a father dynamic there. And God, Patrick Stewart, it broke my heart seeing him broken and knowing what he did. When you find out later, there's a lot of drama there, man. A lot of emotions. Again, this is what it's not just capes and punches. Like there's real emotions here, and the acting portrayals is just brilliant in that film. So yeah, good choice, man.
And just quick nod to that.
All right, man.
The ending of Logan is just an emotional uppercut. I don't think I had just ever sat and died in a theater like the ending of Logan. So which number 3?
So yeah, honestly, I gotta rewatch that film. It's not that I actually loved it. I loved it, but I don't hold it in as high regard as other people. But I think that's just one of those things. It's film subjective, and like if you look at my list and you look at your list, like it hits us differently. But these are films that matter to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So all right, this is the home stretch. So we've already touched on these guys a little bit, and I'm sure you might be talking about them too in your top 3.
Yeah.
2018's Avengers: Infinity War. And a lot like Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, like it's so hard for me to separate the two stories. And admittedly, I'm on the fence that I enjoy Infinity War more than I enjoyed Endgame, but I almost view them as one film. It's like telling it's part 1 and part 2 of the same story, personally. So that's another reason why I left Endgame off my list. I just wanted to talk about Infinity War more because that's one of my favorite comic book films. Obviously, it's my top 3, but it felt like an annual. And I grew up, I was posting on my Twitter, I was digging through storage. I grew up reading stuff like Secret Wars, and that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Being someone that grew up with like Fox X-Men cartoons, and I love Spider-Man, to see Secret Wars and see them all hanging out, like shooting the crap, like, Johnny Storm just talking to Peter Parker, like, hey, what's up, man? I haven't seen you in a while. And it's awesome. And comics have annuals like that where they just throw all these characters together and it's an epic. And Infinity War was the first time it felt real. Like it felt like this is possible. And in a lot of ways, it shouldn't have been possible with all these great actors like Benedict Cumberbatch and Chris Pratt and Robert Downey Jr. and Josh Brolin. It should not work. I mean, how the hell did they even afford the acting salaries? So
yeah.
To see Infinity War and to see it work well, that sequence in New York is probably one of if we had to choose superhero moments, man, probably one of my favorites ever is seeing Doctor Strange. Iron Man flies right by him and like deflects like a car, and even though Hulk can't come out, he's there, Spidey's there. That's one of my favorite action sequences ever. It's just so fun, and I love how Peter catches that fist, like, oh hey. I'm on a field trip to the museum or whatever. And it's like, what are you doing here?
I can't believe you didn't say it. I can't believe. So I have a favorite moment, and I can't believe you didn't say it just then. But go ahead. My number 3 is also Infinity War. Keep going.
Yeah. So, of course, the snap devastated everybody. I mean, I couldn't. I held my breath for like a minute. It took my breath out of myself. The air in the theater was gone. And being a father, I'm going to be dead serious. I bawled my eyes out when Peter said he didn't feel so good. Again, a testament to Tom Holland, man. He's not only the perfect Peter Parker, but
so good.
His relationship with Tony is everything. I don't care what anybody says. He's not Iron Boy Jr. Stop it. Such a great scene. Such a great scene. It's really well acted, and to see him say, I'm sorry, when he's the one dying. As a father, that wrecked me. And a lot of people don't realize what he said sorry for. He said sorry because Tony was trying to send him home, and he like latched him, stowed away on that alien ship. He shouldn't have been there. So he's apologizing to Tony for dying. And that's like one of the most Peter Parker things ever. And thank you, Tom Holland, for being Peter Parker, man. Infinity War is one of the funnest and most emotional and most action-packed superhero films ever.
Yeah, my number 3 is Infinity War. Just so good. The best Avengers movie. I can't believe you said it. You didn't say it. And my favorite moment of this movie, and I wanted it for years and years. Like I knew they were making a Spider-Man into Marvel and all this kind of stuff. And watching the Spider-Man Iron Suit, come out for the first time was one of my favorite geek out moments in a cinema experience. That was so when he saved Doctor Strange from being sucked out into space, and you saw the spider legs come out. I died. I fucking died, and I was so happy. I was screaming for that suit for so long, and that was one of my like low key underrated favorite moments. What can you say about Infinity War, man? It's just a true cinematic symphony of everything that has happened for 10 plus years, man. So kudos to the Russo brothers. They deserve so much credit for balancing all that star power, like we touched on before, and just making a cohesive, epic, great film. So number 3, Avengers Infinity War. What's your number 2, dude?
All right. So, me being a Spider-Man guy, before the MCU, and before 2008, this was my favorite comic book film. He's my favorite hero. We're talking about 2002 Spider-Man 2.
Oh, nice.
For me, because I grew up on the cartoon, and I had the VHS of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I just loved the character. I related to Peter Parker a lot. I wasn't, I had friends, but I wasn't like I was very geeky. I was very like awkward sometimes, and Peter Parker is someone I could relate to. I felt like the things that he experiences, I could experience myself. And even, I'm not kidding, my first job was a pizza delivery boy. And
nice.
People say that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy is a little bit cheesy and corny and campy, but sure, it's a little campy, but that's his style. I mean, if you watch Evil Dead, that's his style. I mean, you can't take that away from him. That's one of his trademarks, but he nails some of the realistic situations very well. For Peter Parker to deliver the pizza and save children on the way before he delivers his pizza, and for this like secretary just like,
so good.
Yeah, sorry, you're late. And then he gets fired from his job, and then because of his responsibilities in Spider-Man, he's failing his college courses, and I hate that we didn't get to see this guy as the Lizard, but Dr. Connors is like, come on, Peter, what's going on here? You gotta step it up. And those realistic situations were perfect. They nailed the character. Tobey Maguire looks like he's 30, unfortunately, but for him as an actor to portray Peter as well as he did, I think is a testament to his own acting. And you touched on it, man. Alfred Molina is great. You genuinely like him. He's a likable guy, and then to see him kind of lose his mind, unfortunately, he lost his wife, and the chip kind of got into his brain. And going to my favorite sequence is the train sequence. I mean, in 2002, now we have Avengers, now we have all this stuff, and we're privileged now as nerdy, geeky comic book superhero fans. But in 2002, I've never seen anything like that Doc Ock Spider-Man fight. That and besides Batman in '89, again, this is comic book panels living and breathing on the screen, like the way that he dodges the tentacles and he's hanging off the window, and Doc Ock is tearing apart this clock tower and throwing chunks of boulders at him. And in 2002, flash forward to now, those effects hold up now. Beautiful CGI work. And last but not least, I know that it wasn't high on your list when we were talking about scores and stuff like that, but Danny Elfman's Spider-Man score just speaks to me. And I have to piggyback on the first one a little bit, but like to hear him say like, with great power comes great responsibility. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man. And you hear the da na na, and he swings. My heart swells every single time he does that final web swing in all 3 of the Spider-Man films. It just takes me away, makes me feel like a kid again. And I could be 40, 50 plus years old, and those films will always take my breath away that way.
Spider-Man 2 kind of crosses a lot of genres for me, but one of my favorite moments of that was the Peter Parker Spider-Man reveal with MJ when she finds out that he's Spider-Man. And there was a lot of emotions there. And what was it? You said 2002? Was it?
Yeah.
Like, that was unheard of.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2004. I got my year wrong. 2004.
You might have said, who knows?
Well, the first one was 02. My bad. The first one was 02.
But that was unheard of for these kind of movies at the time. And that moment packed so much emotion and so much weight for MJ to realize that it was Peter, and it was like it was so fun when Peter's like just standing there holding a building, and MJ's like, it's like, this is really fucking heavy.
Yeah. And you know what? Real quick to put a cap on it, put a stamp on it. Shout out to like that final line. As a comic fan, it gets you right here. Just as much. I was just as excited for the Phoenix scene in X2 as when she says this. For MJ to say, "Go get him, Tiger." It just like perfect. Like it came to life. All of the Spider-Man comics, and even that shot where he has the costume in the trash. Like Sam Raimi, man, he nailed it. I don't know why people want to hate on it. You know, there's a lot of haters on the internet, but you guys are wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man, that movie's deep, and it really fleshes out like Spider-Man's arc. You know, in order for the right thing to be done, doesn't mean we have to put away the things we want the most, and that is like Spider-Man to the core. And so all the spider tingles, man, all the spider tingles, so good. And my number 2, I'm going with my personally favorite MCU movie. And that is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This is hands down my favorite MCU movie. This was the Russo brothers joining the MCU. The single biggest game changer in the MCU was getting the Russo brothers on board. And it just kind of flipped everything what you thought about the MCU. Instead of, a Captain America movie that was, a popcorn flick. It was lighthearted. It was fun. It was an adventure film. We get a serious espionage conspiracy thriller that was so out of left field. It was so fresh. It was such a fresh take on Captain America's character. And everything about this movie felt heightened. The action choreography, the film score, the stakes, the emotional moments, everything clicked. And I go straight to that fight scene between Bucky and Captain America on the highway. Number 1 best moment in the MCU. That was such a game changer for me. It just raised the bar for Marvel in everywhere across the board. And you even start from the opening scene. Like you knew that you were getting a completely new Steve Rogers from the jump. The action, the fight choreography, watching Cap take down like an entire army on a boat, putting his shield away, taking off his helmet and saying, "I don't need this shield," and doing like a backflip and knocking out Batroc or whatever the F his name was. I don't remember.
AKA GSP, UFC welterweight champion of all, greatest of all time.
It was so awesome, man. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, was the biggest game changer in the MCU and just changed everything. That's just my opinion. Any take on that? And let's go to number 1, dude.
I'm ready for it, man. So I love the Winter Soldier. I mean, if we did a top 10 MCU, Endgame, Guardians, Iron Man, Winter Soldier, Thor Ragnarok, those things will be up on my top 10. But, for some of my curveballs and just in terms of films, I loved the Winter Soldier, but it blew me away when I saw it in theaters. But for me, it didn't stick with me as much later on.
Sure.
But for everything that you said, I mean, that fight sequence between Bucky and Steve, not only like the choreography, but the emotions in it too. Because God, when he finally like reveals his face and he's like, "Bucky," great moment, man. And that little knife grab that Bucky does. I mean, God, like it's so for action wise, that's probably like one of my favorite action sequences as well. It's just great choice, man. Are we ready for our number 1s?
My body and my mind are ready. Are you ready?
You know what's funny? I think we have the same number 1. This is awesome. For how different our lists were, this is awesome. And you can see it on my tagline there. Did you want to go first, or is it me? Or
I don't care. I can go first. It's up to you, dude.
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, so I'm going with The Dark Knight. My number 1 movie is The Dark Knight. The film was a phenomenon when it first came out, shrouded by the tragic death of Heath Ledger, man. But I think what makes The Dark Knight so memorable is how Christopher Nolan took the source material about a superhero film and molded it into this like ridiculous, suspenseful crime drama, man. So The Dark Knight was revolutionary for his time. It offered like a darker superhero, but what was so good about it was Heath Ledger, man. And Heath Ledger was so freaking good that it almost made Christian Bale look like a supporting actor in this film. And Nolan's Joker was the complex character of my dreams. It was everything I wanted Joker to be on a big screen and then some. So, it just balanced that, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to touch this. Joker's stance on chaos versus Batman's moral code. It was like the perfect dance between good and evil. It was anarchy versus order. It was just the greatest comic book movie of all time, featuring the greatest superhero and villain of all time. And very rarely do you see, the directors or the team kind of get the source material, get the villain, get the act, that the superhero, and it just translated in all the right areas. There's just so many epic moments in this movie. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. How about a magic trick? Let's put a smile on that face. Some men want to watch the world burn. Joker yelling, "Hit me!" Like, there's so many moments in this movie that make it what it is. It just changed the game. What about you, man?
So even before Batman Begins and 2008's Dark Knight, I was a really big Christopher Nolan fan.
Man.
He took my breath away with Memento.
Oh, so the best.
And he followed it up with a pretty strong feature with Al Pacino and Robin Williams with Insomnia.
So good.
Yeah, and overall, I really enjoyed his work. And to see him enter a superhero genre and really not only make it his own, but like you said, ground it in reality in the sense that, take the Dark Knight, for example. If you take away the Batman, you take away the Joker, and just have that base storyline, that film easily could have been like a spy thriller or like a cop versus like a maniac psycho. Like we said in the beginning, this was more than some comic book film, and it was robbed of Best Picture. It should have been nominated. Heath Ledger deservedly got his Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Rest in peace. But yeah, man, I mean, I was horrified. That first time he tells that story, like, you want to know how I got these scars? Well, my father was a drinker. And it's just like, I was like shaking in my seat, and that little build that and Hans Zimmer did a great job with the score, and it gets under your skin. It gave me goosebumps, and it's a captivating performance. It's you can't take your eyes off him. And you're right, Christian Bale's great, but this film is the Joker's film, and Heath Ledger steals the show. But to not take it away from anybody else, I liked that Christopher Nolan chose the cast that he did. It's a fantastic cast. I mean, Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon is fantastic. And I have to mention this. Well, I got two things to mention, but what he does so well, besides crafting this great story with great performances, he actually created some comic book moments for us to cheer for too. Like, for example, when the Batmobile gets destroyed and all of a sudden it comes apart and you see the Bat Cycle come out, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh yeah, like, and it's like cheer moment, and it's it was built up really well. And lastly, my favorite, like, if we're talking about comic book moments, talking about favorite superhero moments, my favorite cinematic superhero moment is that last 2 minutes of The Dark Knight. That speech, and Commissioner Gordon, like, he just saved his son, and Batman starts running, and he's like, Dad, why is he running? Because obviously he knows he's Batman. He's a good guy. And I love that monologue. Gary Oldman's just like, he's running because he has to, and he can take it. And I just love that, because he's the hero that Gotham needs. The loyal protector, the Dark Knight, and then the credit hits and it just says Dark Knight. It's like, that's like the perfect ending, and it's such a masterclass in showing who Bruce Wayne really is.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily have to be the hero on paper or to the media, but he's doing the hero work behind the scenes, and he's doing it for his city and for the good of the people. And again, Hans Zimmer's score with that monologue, it gives me chills, man. And it's just, when I see Dark Knight hit the screen, I stood up and I cheered. I just wanted more. And that's our number ones, man. The best superhero film I've ever seen, man. It was something else, man. And Christopher Nolan is a legend.
All right. So one of the last things that I love that people don't talk about the Dark Knight trilogy is how complete it was. And normally you have Batman and Batman Returns. What happened after Batman Returns? Like, Batman's in his peak. You have Joel Schumacher's Batman. Who knows what happens with that? But in Christopher Nolan's Batman, you have the beginning, you have Batman at his peak in The Dark Knight, and then you have Batman at his end in The Dark Knight Returns. And that is something that you don't have, we've never experienced on the big screen with Batman. And who knows what's going on with the Batman with Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves? Who knows what's going on with the whole multiverse of Batman's moving forward? But that is just something, like a little thing that I really appreciate, that Christopher Nolan, even though The Dark Knight Rises wasn't that great, the creative decision behind it was. And I just very much appreciate. Anything you want to plug before we wrap it up, dude?
That's about it, man. We haven't had a doozy like this in a while, so I'm spent, man. But I think we had a lot of great choices on both sides, man. And it's just interesting, like, the way these films connect to us, you know? So
absolutely. Make sure you check out my man Loretto on Twitter at Marcellus Durden. Check out Movies Matrix on Twitter. That is at Movies Matrix and moviesmatrix.com. I am Dives, Mr. Crackpot on Twitter, for Loretto, for myself. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay awesome.
I am Iron Man.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
The Force will be with you. Always.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun.
I do this all day. What's but a smile on that face?
That's my secret, Cat.
I'm always open.
Some men just want to watch the world